Hello there, Master Hellish here, and welcome back to my rail route tutorial series. For more info on me, head out to masterhellish.net, and for the series playlist of this tutorial, you can check out the video description. This time, we'll be looking at part 2 of the automation of the system upgrades. So if you haven't seen the other ones and want to, check out that playlist. We'll be looking at the arrival sensor, the departure sensor, and the routing sensor. First up, we will be looking at the arrival sensor. I'm going to unlock that upgrade and we'll check out how to use it. Now, if you've been following this series, I have expanded our rail network slightly just to pad it out and be able to demonstrate these sensors better. If we go to our build tool, we now have arrival sensor down here in the controls section. The arrival sensor is used to get a train from an auto signal onto a platform. So let's have a look at where we can do that. Well, from here I can see there's 3 different places we can do it. But we're just going to expand Landover quickly in order to take advantage of this. Right now, if we wanted to get trains from the auto signal onto the platforms, there's only the option of platform 2. We want to be flexible here. So I'm going to move this signal back a couple of pieces, but to do that we have to deactivate this track so it's not active and move it back. There we go. While we're here, we're going to put a crossover in so that we get that flexibility I was talking about. Now, we've got 3 stations to arrive into. We'll do Landover first, it's the simplest. Let's go into our construction options and get that arrival sensor. What you need to do is place the arrival sensor before your auto signal, which is before the station. So it goes arrival sensor, signal, station. Once you've got that sensor in, you can click on it and the info panel will change up and give you your options. You have to select the auto signal that you want it to work with. We're going to choose this one. You can see you get a little tiny dotted green line. Now, if we was to just quickly remove this arrival sensor and put it, I don't know, further down the track, this would still work. This would still work, and you can see the dotted line much better. And what that will do is that it will set this auto signal to route to the correct platform at the time the train goes across the sensor. So, in order to have your rail network run quite efficiently, I advise getting your arrival sensors as close to your auto signals as possible. Therefore, if there's trains waiting to leave Landover, for example, and your arrival sensor is way back up here on the network, this signal will lock out a route much early on before your train is ready to use it. But if your train comes in and only just gets to the arrival sensor right before the signal, then that will keep this area clear until the train is ready. So we've got our arrival sensor right before our auto signal. We're going to choose the auto signal we're going to use. We get our dotted line and then we choose the station. Now it automatically moves into station selection and we're going to choose Landover. So what this routing sensor will do, arrival sensor, is it will look at which platform the train needs to go to when the train passes over it, and it will automatically route this signal. Let's do the others and then see it in action. Now here we've got a signal. This auto signal is the one that routes from Landover into Benning, and this auto signal is the one that routes from sort of Benning into Riverdale. Now in these examples it's relatively straightforward, but we'll still you can use it in much more complicated situations, but for now this will do as we need. So I've popped a couple of arrival sensors right before these auto signals. So we'll select the auto signal and we'll select the station. And again we'll select the auto signal and we'll select the station. We're not using East Market in this demonstration. So there we have it. When the next train comes, we'll be able to show you exactly how that's working. Now we've got our first train arrived at Riverdale and there's going to be one coming in at Landover soon. But I just realised we actually forgot another sensor. We need to put one for arrival into Benning. So let's just quickly do that now. Pop one in there. get it to work with this auto signal to arrive into Benning. So this sensor from this signal into Benning. There we go. Now we're ready. Okay, so our first train has arrived, and I'm going to use the auto signal on the platform to say, come to this signal block here. We've got one at Landover, and I'm going to approve that train all the way up to that signal block. And we're going to use the arrival sensors to direct the trains into Benning itself. So we're just going to concentrate on this area just here. So the first train to arrive will be the commuter train from Riverdale. It's going to go over that arrival sensor, and that will route that signal for that train. Bam, there we go. So that train wanted to go to platform 2, and it routed it through to platform 2. Now shortly, arriving from the south here, we'll have our train coming from Landover. We'll be able to see the routing that happens here with the arrival sensor. And here we go, just going to go over the sensor, and there is the route into platform 3. So just to note, you don't have to specify the platform where the sensor is going to route to. It will automatically route from the sensor into the platform required by the train. And that is the arrival sensors. Next up we have the departure sensor. So if the arrival sensor is for trains coming into station platforms, well, maybe you can guess. Departure sensor is for trains leaving those station platforms. So we're going to upgrade that. So we've got the departure sensor, and once again that shows in our control section. To build these departure sensors, you just click on a station platform. It doesn't matter where you click on the platform. If you click on one end or the other, the departure sensor will just appear on the platform. So let's quickly just go and put departure sensors on all the platforms where we have trains arriving at. Now let's sort them out. So here at Riverdale, there is an option for us to leave. Once you click your departure sensor, in the info panel you get the sensor information, and it shows you what is called the routing table. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new route with the plus icon. We choose where we want to go. From Riverdale we want to be able to say to go to Benning. So if we click the Benning station, it will then say, right, from this platform, where do you want to go in order to get to Benning? Well, we want to leave the platform and come up to this signal here. That's our first stop out of Riverdale to get to Benning. And that's it. That route is now laid in. And for Riverdale, that's all we need to do. If we had contracts going up to East Market, we could add that one as well. So we can go plus East Market, go straight to East Market. Because we haven't got any signals on the way to East Market, we route straight from the Riverdale platform straight to the East Market platform. And if we hover over these, we'll be able to see the situation. So for the first routing, we're going to Benning, and our first stop is this section of track. For East Market, we're going straight from Riverdale to the East Market platform because there's no signal on the way. Let's just do the one down here at Landover. We've actually got a train leaving now, so that train won't be using this departure sensor, but let's add the routing in. So we're going to say from here, if you are going to Benning, then you need to leave via this section of track. And again, in this tutorial example, it's relatively straightforward. So I've just expanded our rail network so that we have options to go from Landover to Benning and back, but there's also a line that takes us to Riverdale. So now we need to be careful when doing our departure sensor. We've got one routing which goes, if you're going to Benning, then we need to go onto this track, and then we add a second routing that says if you're going to Riverdale, you want to head out to this track. This way it will allow you to specify which way your train will route out of the station and which line it will go on. Let's see this in action. So we've just had a train arrive at Riverdale and it's about to go to Benning. Our departure sensor will work out that that Riverdale train is going to Benning, and it will send it towards this signal. In this instance, that signal has a arrival sensor, so it'll actually put it straight to Benning. This train is going to go completely automatically from Riverdale to Benning and turn around. Here we go. So there we go, it routed out to Riverdale, no problem. Let's see one from Landover. We're about to get a train come in on platform 1 at Landover. We can see it here in the timetable. When it comes into platform 1, this departure sensor will look at where it's going to try and go to, so its end destination, or next destination should I say. In this case it's going to be Benning, which we've got highlighted here in our routing table, and the track segment it's going to send it towards, which is the C80A. If we hold control and click on this segment of track, we can see that that is what that piece of track is. We can actually find out that this one is 193C, and you can rename them. I don't know why you would, but you can do. So when this train comes, which it's about to do, it will route onto this section of track up to this signal. So the train will come out, it will stop for a moment, and then it will continue out, and the departure sensor will route it to the first set of signals. Here we go, there it is. Fantastic, just as we need. Now the last thing we're going to do for the departure sensor is quickly do the ones at Benning. So from Benning we can go over to Riverdale, and to do that we want to go towards this auto signal, and from platform 3 we only ever go down to Landover, and we head out towards this auto signal to do that. And there we go, that is the departure sensor. And finally we're going to look at the routing sensor. To be able to get the routing sensor, you do need to unlock the departure sensor first. So let's choose the routing sensor and upgrade. Now I have changed the rail network again slightly to demonstrate this particular sensor. Here at Landover we come out of platform 1, and our departure sensor automatically sends us to this section of track just in front of it. Here we've got an auto signal, and from here you can go to 2 different sections of track. One section of track will take you right to Riverdale, and one section of track will take you left to Benning via an arrival sensor. We want to be able to route from this signal to the right section of track. We're not coming out of a platform, and we're not going into a platform. We're somewhere in the middle of the network, and that is where our routing sensor comes in. In the build menu, under the controls, we can now put our routing sensor in, and it's similar to the way with the arrival sensor. Ideally, you want it as close as possible to the signal that's going to be doing the routing. So I'll put it here in this instance. We'll select the routing sensor and we'll set up some routes. So first thing we do is bind the routing sensor to an auto signal. There we go, that's that done. Next thing we need to do is actually then add things to the routing table. So when a train goes over the sensor, it'll look at where it's trying to go to, and it'll route through the auto signal as appropriate. Let's set up our first destination. We'll say that if the train is going to Riverdale, we'll click on Riverdale, we want to use not this one, but this track segment. And there we go, there's one routing in there. And we'll also say if we're going to Benning, we want to use this little track segment here. Now our train from Landover will automatically route through up to this section of track. Let's see that in action. Okay, so our train is about to leave Landover. We messed up the routing of the departure because I changed all the tracks, so I'll manually just get it to go up to that routing sensor. Here we go. And the train, in its train details, is wanting to go to Benning. As soon as it goes over that routing sensor, it unlocks that section of track and routes from the auto signal up to the next section. Now that's actually an opportunity to use another routing sensor. What we can do is get our routing sensor before this signal and say, when we go over this routing sensor, we want to activate this signal, and in the routing table, if you're coming up here and going to Riverdale, we want you to route to this section of track there. So looking at this, you can see if we're going to Riverdale, we go to this section of track from this signal. Now in this instance there's only one way it can route, but routing sensors can be used for just these one-way bits so that you can not have to click the signal manually. It just allows it to go through to the next section. Why would you have a signal here and put a routing sensor here? Why not just leave it out, and when you route from this signal, allow it to go all the way up to this section of track here, like this. So from, if you go into Riverdale, which is just flashing on screen now, you go to this section of track from this signal. Well, you could do, but the problem is that when you do that, it takes up this entire section of the network, which is quite demanding. You want to be able to free up as much track as possible and divide your track into various different sections. That is where the routing sensor with an auto signal is fantastic. If we unoccupy that piece of track, pop our signal in and our routing sensor, we can select our routing sensor, bind it to our signal, and add a trip to Riverdale via this junction. That way, when we leave here, we're only going up one little section of track, and when we come from here, we're going up this section of track, just freeing up parts of the network. There's one important thing to note. That is, once you've set up your sensors, if you change a piece of track, like I did here in the middle of the tutorial, your sensors will no longer work properly. Here we've got a departure sensor from Benning, and we can see that it's flashing and says that if you're going to Landover, go to this section of track. But I'm hovering over the section of track and it's not flashing, and that's because we've moved these pieces of rail around and that section of track is no longer valid. What you'll have to do is select that piece of track and reroute it, so that now if we're going to Landover, we have a valid piece of track that it can go to. I've heard that in the future this will be easier to spot with some sort of notification if you break a sensor, but for now you have to make sure that you definitely have those bits routing correctly after you've changed your railways. Now there is one more thing I'd like to say and tell you about the sensors that we've been looking at. Now this doesn't apply to the arrival sensor, but the departure sensor and the routing sensor both have an extra feature in common. And that's this down here, right at the bottom of the info table. It says others to select track, finish to select track. So you can route trains that don't match your routings in the table to other places. Now, let me just rephrase that. So if there's no matching station found in the routing table, this will then be used. Okay, so you can use these sections to route them to various different places. So if you want to, you can just say, well, any train that comes through here, if it's not found in the routing table, just go to this section of track. Or maybe just go down this section of track over here. Just park them in the dead end. It's probably not a good thing to actually do, park them in the dead end, but you know, that is just an example. So just be aware that you've got that feature there. I very often use it with coachyards, but we'll look at that when we unlock coachyards. So, once you've unlocked all of these automation unlocks and implemented them on your network, your trains will run completely automatically, departing a station, routing through your network, arriving at stations, turning around, and all of that good stuff all by themselves, which I find very satisfying to watch actually. So there we have it, a fully automated network using the automation upgrades. In upcoming videos we're going to look at all the other upgrades in the game, so if you've not already subscribed, consider doing so for more Railroute and other games like this. Leave your thoughts, ideas and questions down in the comments section below, and I will see you soon. Thank you very much for watching, and for now, goodbye.